Hey, everybody, welcome to Ministry Discussions Part 5. I need you guys. I'm super excited about the conversation that's getting ready to take place right now. But before I bring in our guest, I need you to let me know what state you all are watching from. Let me know what church you guys are watching from, what organization. Let's just flood the comments because I want to make sure that our guest is feeling comfortable. We have Randallstown, Maryland in the house. Washington, D.C. is in the house. We have, let's see, let me give y'all some screen time. Love. Watching from Shelby, North Carolina. Hey, hey, hey. Let us know. Flood these comments, and we're going to get started in just a second. I want to thank you guys personally for supporting ministry discussions. Certainly, God laid this idea on my heart just to sit down and have some discussions with people who have been influential in my life. And certainly, our guest has not known me forever, but definitely I have watched her from afar, and she has been super influential. Waldorf, Maryland. Oh, that's my granddad. Hey, granddad is in the house. And so she has been influential from afar, but influential nonetheless. And so today we have Dr. Lesley Francisco McClendon, and she serves as senior pastor of C3, affectionately known as C3, called Calvary Community Church in Hampton, Virginia, which holds a special place in my heart because everybody knows that I've graduated from the real HU in Hampton, Virginia. And so I'm so excited because she serves as lead pastor, and her husband, Caleb, who is a dynamic preacher. They both are great together. They both teach with vigor and passion, and he serves as the assistant pastor. And so today we are just honored, first of all, because she's super brilliant. And I know that she's very humble, but I'm going to read her pedigree because she has several degrees. Okay. Now know that. And so Dr. Lesley earned a Bachelor of Arts degree with honors from Oral Roberts University, a Master of Divinity degree from Regent University, and recently finished her doctoral degree with the emphasis in leadership from Duke University. And she is born into a family that is known for ministry, doing ministry for generations. So she is not new to this. She is certainly true to this. And so I love when I read her bio earlier today. It has this one line, and it said that she could hardly see herself doing anything else but preaching, and she is certainly equipped for the task. I am super excited about welcoming her to Ministry Discussions Part 5. And so you can connect with her. I'm going to put her out there before I bring her on, but you got to go and connect with her further by following her on Instagram at Lesley F. McClendon or visiting her website at lesleymcclendon.com. But without further ado, I want to bring on our guest for today.
Hey, how are
McClendon.
you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing well. I made it. I'm on ministry discussions.
Oh no, you did. Listen, so here's a disclaimer, right? You know, we always get like honest here. So when I called Dr. McClendon, I know I just have to be like, super proper with it because
Oh gosh.
I was super nervous to call. I just didn't know. And I was like, I'm just gonna reach out to her. I know I heard God, so I'm just gonna reach out. And she was super nice and super sweet. And we just kind of hit it off. And so I'm
Yep.
just kind of gonna publicly like name her my new like big sister. And so
Let's do it.
I'm super excited, but I want to make sure that we make the most of this time. And I'm again so grateful that you are here. And I don't know if you want to give any opening remarks, if you want to say anything, but if not, we can hop right into the questions.
We can hop into it. I'm just glad to be here and excited to have this dialogue with you, and I'm looking forward to what comes out of it.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I want to ask you the first question because I read your pedigree. I read that on purpose because certainly it needed to be said. But it's just amazing that you have continued in your education and you kept going, and so now you're in this place where you finished at Duke. So I mean, people, that's not normal. Like, that's not a normal thing. Like, it's amazing. Like, first of all, doctoral work, but then doctoral work at Duke. That's another thing. So
it's challenging.
Oh, definitely. And I'm sure you could write a whole book on it. But I want to ask the question, why did you find it necessary to pursue theological education?
Yep. Well, for me personally, I value education and proficiency in one's chosen field. When we think about doctors and lawyers and presidents of universities, it's imperative that they have credentials. And so I wonder, why is it any different in our field, right? In preaching, in pastoring. And if we look at the word theology in its purest form, it's actually the study of the nature of God and religious belief. So for me personally, I was figuring, if I'm going to serve in an organized religion and preach about God, no matter how gifted I might be, I still want to have those credentials to back it up and give me that extra edge. And I think for me, personally, also, it feels, or it shows other people that I'm serious about my line of work. Absolutely. Or I'm serious about my craft, right? So even in my congregation, I desire to have all levels of experience and expertise represented. And so even if I want to attract professionals, for me, it's like, why should I go and pursue higher if you don't do it? Right. And that's just how I was thinking. And so I think it also shows people that once I start something, I'm also able to finish it and to complete it as well.
I'm so glad you ended on that, that whole, I started something and I'm able to complete it. For me, when I actually started, even at Hampton, I didn't realize the weight of really understanding that I started something by choice and I finished by choice. So many people don't look at theological education in that light, that this is something, we were called to the work, but we weren't necessarily called to have to go to seminary, called to have to study further. And so I'm glad that you hit on that. Because I've experienced that weight, and I'm coming to the end of my seminary time and I'm realizing, wow, like I really chose to do this and I really chose to finish. And so I commend you for that. And I love that answer. And so you and I talked over the phone, and we promised you guys, the viewers, that we would save some of our good conversation for the viewership. But we begin to talk about the importance of not being one-sided. And I know, especially for our generation and someone like you who's very forward thinking and of course educationally astute, but the importance of just not being one-sided educationally. So thus your vast different your vast different schools of choice. And so can you just explain why you thought that was important? Like why you made those decisions?
Yeah, for me, it was important to be able to see things from different perspectives. When I look at the New Living Translation of 1 Corinthians 9, verse 22, Paul says, I become all things to all men so that I might win some. But the New Living Translation says, I try to find common ground with everyone, doing everything I can to save some. So with this approach, I wanted to be able to diversify my thoughts and be able to move in different circles. So for example, Oral Roberts was highly Pentecostal charismatic. Regent was extremely conservative, and Duke was what people would call very liberal. And instead of saying, no, God only works one way or with this one train of thought, I'm able to say, I see your point, but have you considered it from this perspective? And even with that, is not to say that it doesn't come without its share of struggles, right? So the difficult part about this, if you should take up this journey, is that sometimes your theologies will fight each other.
Please talk about that, right? Yeah,
right. So that's interesting, because you're like, well, my conservative and liberal sides are fighting, and then here comes the Holy Spirit, and what am I doing? And so oftentimes I feel like I can resonate with Timothy. Paul was his mentor, right?
Yeah.
And so Paul was this Jewish guy who had a heart for his own people, but success with other people. And so when you think about it, Paul was very cross-cultural. He didn't get beat up by the Gentiles. He got beat up by his own people. And so here
Right.
comes Timothy on the scene, and Timothy is a hybrid, right? So he probably felt out of place because his dad was a Gentile, his mom was a Jew. He never fit in. And Paul is saying to Timothy, yo, like, you're the person that I've been looking for. You're a hybrid culture. You can go in and out of different spaces. And so Timothy was uniquely made by God to do certain things, but he still had to get circumcised in order for him to be received by his own people. And so that's to say that there was still some private pain that he had to deal with.
Wow.
However, seeing things from other perspectives broadens my scope and allows me to operate as a hybrid, meaning that I can speak to people in ways that other people may not be able to.
I'm over here like just bewildered because literally what you said, you don't even understand how much you just helped me personally. I know you're helping people who are watching, but how much you helped me. But it's literally seeing and hearing people like you say things like what you just said that has helped me be comfortable in seminary spaces, in higher learning and higher education. Because, you talked about how the Holy Spirit creeps in, but then, you have the other ideologies that you're fighting with. And so when I entered into seminary, I was afraid. I was scared because you know what I don't know if you know about this, but they call the seminary the cemetery.
Cemetery, right?
You learn and you lose your burning, all of those
Yep.
things. And actually, as I have matriculated, and just as you have stated, it has only broadened my scope. And I love the way you so eloquently put that it's only broadened me and given me the ability to serve both and do both and be ambidextrous. And so I thank you for that answer. And I'm just sitting over here like, wow, as I come to the end of my journey, you've actually just said everything that I needed to hear.
Yeah, so the whole Timothy thing just gave me language for where I felt that I was, that I'm called to more than one group of people. And I think even through that, even post-theological training, I've really had to rely on the Holy Spirit because, the Bible says the Holy Spirit will lead you and guide you into all truth. And I found myself saying, Lord, I know what I've learned, but I need you to be my ultimate teacher because sometimes, this wrestling and this warring is a bit intense. And so it's definitely built up my faith, if not anything else. Seminary will help you rediscover faith for yourself, right? So you grow up, your parents or grandparents or whoever may have introduced you to the faith. Honestly, sometimes when you go to seminary, you feel like you lost it and you were like, I believe in God, but I can't prove God exists. Like, what am I learning?
Right.
And then all of a sudden you kind of like, oh, Jesus is real. And now I know that I have this experience for myself. So it's been a journey.
Yeah, that whole experience for yourself is second to none. And it's not until you actually put yourself in the position that you're like, wow, I really understand. And it just gives you or lets you know that when you come in with the foundation, it can't be shaken, but you do have experiences that broaden your thoughts and broaden what you came in believing. And so with all of that, you've been preaching since you were what age exactly? I don't want to get it wrong.
Well, it's a bunch of different answers.
I understand.
At 4 years old, my maternal grandmother passed away. And I remember at her funeral going up to a lady saying, hey, my grandma's laying up there. She's not coming back. She's in heaven with Jesus. One day you're going to die. Do you know the Lord? And so it's kind of like a baby evangelist at 4.
So it's always been in you. Yeah.
Right. I told my parents I wanted to be a preaching pastor at 3 years old. Preached my first mini sermon at 7, really got serious about ministry at 15 and was ordained at 21.
Wow. I did not know the last part about being ordained. That had to be like amazing, like 21 being ordained. And so I started preaching at 15. And so I can only imagine your journey. But I asked that to say, can you just tell us how you found your voice? So many people, and I know you've gotten this question, just being out there and preaching and being a young woman in ministry. How did you find your voice?
Yeah, honestly, I think before you become a voice, you're almost an echo of somebody else. And
Say
so whoever you're surrounding yourself with, you kind of glean from them a little bit. And then as you begin to develop and mature and really study the word of God, you kind of begin to lead out of this authentic place. And then you kind of begin to speak out of who it is that you are, not getting away from those foundations, but you almost find your voice through who God created you to be as a person. And so I think in addition to finding the voice, the difficult part is being comfortable with the voice that you've been given and entrusted to. At least that's been my experience.
Can you expound on that last part? Because that was like powerful. You're
Mm-hmm.
expounding on the voice that you've been given rather than going off of the voices that are around you. Like, can you just talk to that? Because, and I say this only
Mm-hmm.
because, we live in a YouTube university type of age, and beyond even YouTube university, you hit on this thing of us being echoes of what we have heard, and we all can attest to it. Growing up,
Mm-hmm.
you only produce what you have seen. And so can you just
Yep.
expound on that a little bit for us?
Yeah. So for me, starting out with an echo, I finally realized that there's one point, right, where I might be wearing this armor, but it doesn't fit. It doesn't feel quite comfortable. Like this isn't quite, who I am. So even growing up, I have been surrounded by a lot of like what you would call like preachers. I mean, going hard. And even though I appreciate that style, I love it, I can't do it. And so there would be times in my ministry where I felt tremendous pressure, like, oh, I need to be able to tune up, or my voice doesn't get high enough, or when I start speaking, this little twang comes out, and people is like, who's this little country girl?
Mhm.
And really the way that I became confident is understanding that when people would invite me, they're not inviting me for me to speak through another person's, voice. They're inviting me because of what they saw. So when someone invites Diamond, right, they want Diamond's gift. They're not asking for Lesley, they're asking for you because they see what you bring to the table, and they know that people's lives will be transformed based off of the authenticity that you carry. So,
I'm so glad you said that. I mean, you're just hitting on all the points, and I'm sitting here like, God, you're so amazing. Just bringing you to me and just being like, this is who you need to ask. That whole piece, and it took me, and I'll be honest, and I know there are people who are watching. I know Brittany just said she was trying to find authenticity and be comfortable with it. But that whole piece you said, that when people invite you, if only we could grasp that. When
mhm,
people invite you, they are inviting you for you and not for
right.
you to be someone else. And how many times as young preachers do we find ourselves or being invited to certain spaces and feeling like we must rise to the occasion, when
Mhm.
no, they invited you because you're already equipped for the task at hand. And so I love that, and I thank you for that tidbit of wisdom. And so you spoke about your grandmother's presence
Mhm.
previously. And so I got to give you all this tidbit that, you came on my live when I had the
Yeah.
conversation with my grandma, which was the
That was
first.
so emotional for me.
And and so you made the comment where you said this made you miss your grandmother. And so as I was sitting there having the conversation, I'm trying to like fight back tears for the sake of
Yeah.
being live. And so I thought it appropriate just to ask you, about your grandmother's presence. And so I know how grateful I am to have my grandmothers in my
Mhm.
life and have that my grandmother on my paternal side, who is a pastor, and having that voice in my life. And so I want to ask about your grandmother's presence and role in your life. And I was not privileged to know her. However, from the way that you spoke on my live, it's clear that she had a major influence on your life and ministry. So can you
Oh
just
yeah.
expound on that for us?
Absolutely. I think it's appropriate too. We just finished talking about Timothy, and Paul encouraged Timothy in the faith that he got from his grandmother,
Yeah.
Eunice and Lois. And people
Yeah.
don't like to preach from that part. Timothy, don't despise your youth. But
Yep.
no, Timothy got a foundation from
Yeah.
his mother and his grandmother. And so my grandmother embodied a life of faith. And what you're seeing now is a manifestation of a seed that she started. Actually, my grandma lived with us since 1994. I was born in 89. So when I was 6 years old, she moved in. We were together as like a third parent, had three parental figures growing up. I still have text messages to this day of her saying, very good word, or I wasn't feeling my best today and you ministered to me, or, you're some kind of preacher. And I was just glad to know that in her lifetime, she was able to see a third generation succession. Like, she and my grandfather founded the church that I now have the privilege to pastor. And so I
Wow.
remember even, as she was in hospice care and I was at her bedside, I was so sad because I felt, I waited too long to ask my grandma to lay hands on me and just bless me. And, she was a little non-responsive at this time. And I remember as I was at her bedside, I grabbed her hand, and I'll never forget, she couldn't even talk. She held my hand for like 5 minutes. And it was like I felt liquid faith like going through my pores. It was the craziest experience ever, like just oozing through my veins. And she actually passed February 5th of this year, 2 days after my 31st birthday. And I had the honor yet most difficult task to eulogize her. And it was crazy because everybody was telling me text to preach, like, oh, she was a Proverbs 31 woman, or, talk about Titus 2, how the elders should teach the younger. And as I was praying and studying, I came to the book of Jude. And, nobody ever really preaches from Jude except when it's time for the benediction. Now unto him, right?
Right.
And so I preached from Jude 20 through 23, and I titled the eulogy, The Founder's Favorite. So when you read the passage, it summed up my Graham's life in 3 points. It said to build yourself up in the faith, to pray in the spirit, and to remain in God's love. And so the interesting about the thing about this is at the eulogy, it became apparent as soon as like I finished preaching that I was the successor. And it was almost as if God used this moment to affirm me on the spot. My installation was not supposed to be slated till May, but at the close of it, I had bishops and prophets and lay people, congregation, people on the internet that I've never met in person saying that eulogy, like, did something to me. I was depressed and hope came up on me. Like, if anybody were to think that you weren't the successor, like, today had to happen. Like, today was your installation date. And to me, like, that holds so much weight for somebody to say that I've never heard a eulogy delivered like that with such poise and grace and filled with hope. And it was life-changing. And to me, I think it'll always hold a great deal of significance.
Wow. And I'm sitting here shocked because first of all, what a powerful story. But when I put that question together, I was not aware that your grandmother founded the church. Your grandmother and your grandfather, if I heard correctly, founded the church that you are now pastoring. Mm-hmm. Can you tell us, I mean, you shared how powerful the moment was, but how does that feel for you, like day in and day out? And I asked this, I know I'm kind of rambling because I'm just bewildered, but I asked this because so many people see the transition, but you are actually living the transition. You go into the office day in and day out. We're going to talk about what it's like pastoring the pandemic, but I think this moment and this question is so rich. What is that like with that weight and that mantle?
I mean, it's amazing. To me, it is purely biblical. I mean, you'd have some people who would argue nepotism, right? Like, well, you only inherited that ministry because it's your family line. And I just think about God even, right? God says that I'm the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, right? Absolutely. It's 3 generations. And so when I take that context and think about what I'm living into now, I mean, it's just the biggest privilege and responsibility ever to know that they planted something, my parents watered it, and here we are in a season where God is going to begin to give us the increase. It's just an amazing feeling.
That's super amazing. And with that being said, I wonder if you know this person that's commenting on here, if you know who that is. I see the last name.
That's my mama.
So I figured just a shout out there. But what a powerful story. I think succession is beautiful, but the way you just painted that picture and the way you expounded and how transparent you were about that, I thank you for that. because I wrestle myself with, my grandmother being pastor and some of the transitions and all of that. And so you don't know how much you just blessed me. Again, I know you're blessing the people out there, because the comments are coming. I'm trying to put them up as they're coming. But
I hope they've shared the broadcast.
Oh, yeah, yeah. See, Dr. McClendon said, not Diamond. Dr. McClendon said to share the broadcast. No, certainly there are people who literally need to hear this stuff. And I even think about, as I'm listening to you speak, I'm kind of having like nostalgia in a way, because I remember being like, I know I'm 24 now, but I remember being younger. And like, if it weren't for people who said yes to God in their younger years, I would never be comfortable doing what I'm doing. That's
real.
It's such a real thing, because me seeing people operate in their gifts, and even me listening to you right now, is giving me like the hope, like you can walk out this journey, like you can do this. And so again, thank you for your yes. I'm trying not to get, I don't know why you make me emotional. Like, I know it's the Holy Ghost. Like, I know it is. I'm totally not ignorant to how God works. I'm young, but I'm not ignorant to how God works. So again, just thank you. And shout out to Taylor. Taylor is watching. That's our
Taylor.
Taylor is on today. And I know you know this person. Caleb McClendon said, thank you for your yes. And I echo.
That is my husband. He's probably saying thank you for saying yes to marry him.
Oh, yeah. Right. So I know he's like, I married up, like,
That's an interesting story too. Like, if I can just go into that really quickly.
No problem.
Honestly, a fear of mine was going into ministry. I told you I got ordained at 21, and I was just thinking, like, who in the world, because sexism still exists, right? And I was like, who in the world is going to marry me? Like, I'm coming in knowing I'm going to be a senior pastor in my 20s. Like, I wasn't saying all hope was lost, but I was like, it's a slim chance. Like, what I'm going to do? You know what I'm saying? And here comes this guy, God really ordained it. And I remember we cultivated a strong friendship, and we started like liking each other. And I was like, I have something to tell you. It's like, what? And I said, the Lord called me to preach. I'm going to be a senior pastor one day. And he was like, okay, like, I'm a Christian rapper. You get the short end of the stick. Let's do it. And I was just like, yes, like, and it's been great.
No, that's amazing. Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because so many times, especially being young and a woman in ministry, like, oh Lord, what am I?
You get typecast, and you know, one of my prayers was, I don't make an idol out of marriage. I think that you can be very successful single. So this isn't, I'm not making an idol out of it. But one of the things I wanted to show was, God, I want to be able to say that you can be young, you can love the Lord, you be female, and you can be married. Like, let me be that template. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it just happened to work out. And that's not everybody's desire, and it doesn't have to be. And so, like I was saying, I don't want to make an idol out of marriage. Like, this should be your end goal. But for me, it was something that I desired, and the Lord granted that for me.
Absolutely. So we got the confirmation. Caleb said all the way up, all the way up. And so my grandmother's on. She says, thank you, Dr. McClendon, for sharing your grandma's vision. She actually saw you pastoring when God revealed his will to her. Wow. Thanks, Grandma.
Thank you.
Pastor Doris P. Presley. Her church is actually the same age as me. Isn't that like crazy?
That's amazing, actually.
That's crazy. So
I love that.
I want to not shift gears, but continue in this vein and just ask you, like, and you've pretty much touched on it, but what does that succession in a pandemic look like for you? I know you could write a book on this. I know you probably like, what did I get myself into? But you've been equipped for the task. But let us know, what does that look like in this season?
I actually did my doctoral dissertation on succession. So I plan to add a chapter on navigating like the digital space that we're in, and like adding, something on the pandemic as well. But succession in a pandemic has been both challenging and rewarding. Challenging because, it just came on so quickly. Grandma died in February, COVID hit in March. Installation was supposed to be in May. So graduation, right? I was supposed to
Yeah.
get installed as a senior pastor, graduate in May. All those celebrations just gone, right? So I just felt like so many things were ripped from me. So I'm in this high moment, but I'm still like grieving heavily,
Yeah.
the loss of a loved one, the loss of celebrating a degree, the loss of a celebration of coming to this new space as a pastor. So succession for me has looked like virtually earning the trust of the congregation.
Wow.
It's like I loved you when I could see you in person, but what are you like consistently over the internet, right?
Yeah.
It's a different level of trust, and it has meant revisiting systems and vision. It's been a series of pivots. While it's been an interesting season, it's also been a blessing though, because I would say that there's a little more grace that's given because no one has lived through a pandemic this long since the Spanish flu in 1918.
Right.
So we're all, trying to figure this thing out. And thankfully, we can honestly say, at least in my church context, that we're better now than we were when we first went virtual in March. Our community engagement is better. Our sound and video quality is better. We've been intentional about what we need to keep and what we need to cut, or who we need to cut, for lack of a better term.
We've all visited. I'm not a senior pastor, but I've been a part of the conversations of,
Right.
that comes up. Yeah.
And so even for me, I think one of the biggest things that I've learned as a new senior pastor is we're having more conversations and less commands, right?
Wow.
And so that's not to say that I don't lead, but now I'm leading more so with questions and a team-based approach as opposed to you do this, you do that, and I know everything. It's been rewarding to kind of take a position of humility and say, I don't quite know everything that's going on, but you have a skill set and I know this and you know that. What would it look like if we just led together as a team? So that's what succession has kind of looked like for us.
Can you say that one more time? Less commands and more conversations.
Yep.
That's like, somebody needs to put that in the comments because that's like leadership 101. And so while I'm sitting here listening to you, have you ever thought like about the timing of you becoming pastor, like in the midst of a pandemic? And I'll just be honest, I was on your website because I wanted to look at your bio, and I'm looking at the things that you've been teaching pre-COVID, but now you're put in the position to lead in such a time as this. And so it's like, no one knew. And
Nobody.
I don't doubt that, people have the Holy Ghost, people are connected, but no one really knew what was going to happen. But the timing, like God's timing is just, you can't beat it. You can't beat it. So, wow. That's right. Less commands and more conversation. Absolutely.
Yep.
So many people assume that because you are a young, innovative senior pastor, that pastoring in a pandemic is easy for you. I just want to ask, is that true?
Who said that?
They just assume because you're young, you're hip. Look at the background, you got the lights, like you come prepared. So they just figure like,
yeah. So is it easier? I think you would have to define what you mean by the word easier. So from my perspective, I would say that the assumption is false. And here's why. Our church has several generations represented. That means although people are quarantined, we have to find a way to keep adolescents to great grandparents engaged. Yeah. And that's hard. Yeah. So think about trying to do something for children virtually, yet they're stuck on screens all day doing school. When they're tired of school, they're on their PlayStations. And here you are, let's do Zoom Bible study. And they got screen fatigue, right? And then on the opposite end of the spectrum, you've got this elderly population where they may not even have internet access, right? And they crave communication, yet they're the most vulnerable population. So what do you do with that? It's tough. And I would venture to say that my team, at least, and I think I could speak for a lot of pastors, that we've worked harder during this pandemic than we have before. It's also harder because you're competing with so many other voices online. And so I'm grateful that most of our congregations like Team C3, and then I'm going to brunch. But when you think about it, people can say, I'm not really feeling this service today, or this is a part of the service, the announcements, I don't really care about that. Let me go see what bishop or pastor, apostle so-and-so is doing. And I think another part of it too that makes it challenging is so many people are rejoicing over views, but I think we're confusing views for engagement. And the views are inflated right now, and it's not the same thing.
Views versus engagement. Truly. I noticed, and I'm just a lowly marketing director. Yeah, I preach, but that's what I do. And so I noticed that, when COVID first hit, that the numbers were high, people were engaged, and then the numbers died down. But it wasn't, so to speak, that people didn't, quote unquote, want to watch, but they realized, I'm not obligated to watch at 9:30 on Sunday or at 10:45 or 11 o'clock. I could sleep in
and catch the replay.
Yeah. So when you think about the whole engagement piece, that's kind of important, because then you have, and I don't want to speak outside of my purview, but then you have other, ministries that are saying high numbers, but then you don't have the engagement, because it's like, I'm just watching you for entertainment, or because this is good, but I'm not really invested or engaged in the ministry. And so I'm glad you made that. I know you're helping a lot of people on here, because that you're giving the wording to what people are trying to figure out.
And I would venture to say, when this all levels out, that we all need vacations, because we ain't been quarantined. We're tired.
Actually, like when this all hit, I was like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. Like, I feel like my workload just doubled overnight.
No, that's real.
So I could only imagine what you felt of being the end all be all, the leader. So you need a vacation. You see Caleb, you on vacation?
Tell him.
Vacation time. He's like, okay, first of all, mind your business. No. So yes, we got Team C3. I love that. C3 is me. That's cool. Okay, Taylor. I'm guilty, LOL. See, these millennials.
Taylor is guilty. I remember texting her like, why don't I see you in church? I don't see you in the comments.
Taylor, get on church on time. Wake up and get on church. Get and watch. And don't just be watching. I want you to engage, like Dr. McClendon said. My God.
Right.
Conversation is for you. No, I'm just kidding. So we got here vacation. Oh yes, vacation. So, okay, I definitely want to dive into this question, and I want to give this caveat really quick. If you are watching and you have questions for Dr. McClendon, begin to think of them now, because we want to respect her time and watching. So we're going to open up for questions. So if you want to drop them in the comments, please do. And if appropriate, she will answer them. And so I want to ask this question, because being young in ministry, I've struggled with finding a sense of normalcy. You know this, I'm preaching to the choir, but just wanting to be regular. I think I've said that probably 100,000s of times in my lifetime. I just want to be regular. So I want to ask, and I kind of know the answer, but I want you to explain. Have you ever experienced pressure in ministry? And I know you're like, really? No. But
I'm also a PK. I was born into pressure.
Please answer from that view as well. Right. Because I think that's even more, like, that's another layer, like a thick layer, but it's a layer. So how did you handle that pressure? How did you handle it?
Was hard. As a PK, I remember you would have to live up to standards that the ministers and deacons' kids didn't have to. I have grace for mine, but judgment for you.
Yeah.
And I even remember little games like who can get to the pastor's daughter first. I mean, it was crazy. But I think even becoming a senior pastor, for some reason, once my title shifted, so did something else. There was like this weight that's attached to ministry. And even with that, I think I have a healthy dose of fear. But one of the things that scares me, and it's also a pressure, is knowing that people's destinies are tied into my teaching, right?
Yeah,
It,
wow.
it, it's being sensitive and knowing what to speak and what to sit on.
Mm.
I've come to understand, and here's something that's really, really like been weighing on me is, Lesley, you have to be careful, because the things that you are chewing on, your congregation can choke on. You know what I'm saying? Like
Y'all don't
you
put that in the
can't,
comments. Oh my gosh. Keep going. I'm sorry.
like I can't give you everything that I'm digesting and that I'm learning, because the level that I'm processing it on, if I don't teach it properly or really break it down, like this could be detrimental to your health, right? And so that has been a pressure in and of itself. And then another pressure for me, honestly, is standards. I have very high standards, and I think because of those high standards, others have kind of adopted those for me too. And I
Mm.
think that's been a challenge, because I definitely battle perfectionism. And I know earlier in my ministry, I would always be like, God, I don't want to have a fall. You know, you'd be seeing scandals and stuff. And I'd be like, Lord, I don't want to fall. Like, just protect me, please. And I know a lot of people don't talk about this, but for me and my context, because I'm so educated and all that kind of stuff, I personally have to be careful not to become legalistic or pharisaical because I'm a good Christian, or because I appear to excel in so many ways. And I've learned that there's a thin line between walking in excellence and high standards and character and pride. Um, so, you know, the Bible says that knowledge puffs up. So I have to ensure that I'm not relying solely on human wisdom or intellect, but the wisdom of God. And I think one of the things that has honestly helped me is, I started praying this prayer when I was in college, really young. And that prayer is simply this: Lord, don't promote me prematurely. You
Yeah.
know, in an age where people are like, I want this, like, God, take me to the nations, God, give me this, XYZ. Don't promote me if I'm not ready for it. Don't take me to a level that my character can't sustain. And if I'm honest, sometimes I've gotten mad at myself for that prayer, because I've felt that there are places and spaces that I should have been in by now. And maybe some of them I should have. But on the other hand, I'm grateful because I see it as God's protection and blessing, right? And so, even beyond that, I think another way to handle it more practically is accountability. Not only with friends, mentors, and pastors, but also therapists. And I think that the church as a whole would be better if her pastors and leaders went to therapy and didn't try to hide it. And so, for me personally, like, I believe in preventive therapy, like going to talk to somebody before or when there's not a major crisis on the table, right? I just need to talk so you can keep me level headed, so I don't exhibit toxic behavior. Like, are there any traits in my conversation that you hear are going a little bit sideways? And so I'm committed to destigmatizing therapy. Like, you know, how cool would that be if you get up, hey, pastor goes to therapy. I was in somebody's chair today, and they're like, wait, like, you hear from God and you still go get like
Yeah.
mental health checkups? How
Yeah.
liberating is that? Like, oh snap, if you do it, like, and then I can do it too. We'll destigmatize it.
I think that's so powerful because, like, hearing you talk about therapy for me is normal, like that. But for some, that is a big
Mhm.
deal. Like, you hear from God, but you still need that. Yes. And so for you being okay with that, like, I'm gonna destigmatize it, like, that is major. Like,
Mhm.
that's super major. And I think many need to adopt that. Many need to adopt that. And then you talked about the whole fact of, what you are chewing on, your congregation can choke on. Can I
Yeah.
say, like, that is, I'm trying not to be super like Generation Z right now, but that is a level of maturity that it just shows your level of maturity, because oftentimes we feel like just because God gave it to us that it's time to
Yep.
spew it out on the people. But like you said, it can be detrimental. And
Mhm.
so coming to grips with, even though I know this is good and this is what you need, I gotta hold it in. And that
Yep.
can be tough. Like, that can be really tough, because
Mhm.
even, for me, like being in seminary and, having eye-opening moments, and even as I mature in God beyond my studies, there
Mhm.
are things that downloads that I get, even in my preaching. And I'm like, Diamond, you can't say it like that. Like, you need to go back. go back to God and spend some more time and let God mature you or perfect you in that. And then you'll be able to say it. Even sermons, I'm so glad you said that. Even sermons that I have taken the time to flesh out, and it's like, not yet, young preachers. No, not yet. You need to go back. But
you have to sit on it sometimes.
Yeah, and I understand on your level, it's different in a pastoral capacity, but that just helped me process, those feelings of just, no, not yet. I know it's real good, and you itching to say it, but no, just wait. So my aunt, Dr. Payton, who is a psychologist, she is on.
Hey.
She says therapy works. Absolutely, that's right. That's my aunt.
100%.
Absolutely. And so, what is a piece of advice? And we're going to move into another question because I think this has just been like super helpful. And again, drop your questions if you have them. But if there is any piece of advice that you could give to a young woman or man walking into their calling, what would it be? I know you get many questions. How can I do this? What can I do?
It will be a 3-word sentence. Beware of the 4. Beware of the compare.
Wow.
And I say that because comparison is a lose-lose. You're new, you're young, you're excited to go into ministry, automatically start Googling other people. Let's be honest. Like, what is such and such doing? They're my age. Oh, they're here at this level. Why am I not there? Like, what did they have to do to get there? And I tell my congregation even all the time, comparison is a lose-lose. And here's why. Either when I compare myself to somebody else, I'm like, oh, I got that in the bag. I think I'm better than you. Or my self-esteem is compromised because I think I'm not good enough. So comparison is a lose-lose. You don't win anything. The other thing I would say is find a mentor. Learn from those who have been doing this work longer than you've aspired to do it. Here's one of the biggest things that I've learned is that I don't have to have the same style as you to be submitted.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Talk about that. Right.
Yeah. So here's an example. You can be submitted to someone who isn't as gifted as you are, but they're there to process you on a level that you can't do on your own strength, right? So for example, you could be a great preacher, but you lack business skills. And when you retire, you ain't got nothing to retire to, right? You don't have finances in order. Or for example, you could be highly intellectual, yet lack people skills.
Yeah.
So you want to be in relationship with someone who can expose you beyond your scope of thinking. So don't just look at someone who matches the same level of gifting as I am. Find someone who can process you in the areas in which you're weak so that you can be multifaceted and be able to do more than one thing, right? So LeBron says, I'm more than an athlete. You can be more than a preacher,
Absolutely.
Be a graphic designer. I mean, how helpful is that in this pandemic, right? That I can do more than one thing. You can help people in business. I think the church has done a disservice to those who are called to ministry because so long the only ministry gifts look like, I'm either serving in children's church, I'm a preacher, I'm an usher or a greeter. But what would it look like if it's like, oh, I'm an estate planner and I can help people live out their legacies? I talked to somebody about that earlier today. Or what would it look like if the church used the multiplicity of gifts to help really form our community so we could actually flourish?
I'm with you 100%. The whole comparison piece, it's the thief of joy. My aunt said it, and finding a mentor is super important. And actually, the last ministry discussion that I had, we talked about mentorship and how we pass down so much, primarily in the African American church, because we hold mentorship in high esteem. But we don't talk about cultivating other parts of you or cultivating other giftings that you house. And I think that that's super important. I want to ask this last question because we have 2 from the comments. Again, answer them as you please. But I've asked. Well, I gotta ask you 2 more. Okay, I'm sorry.
That's fine. I mean, I'm good. So
okay,
if your audience is good, we can finish the rest of the questions if you want to. So
okay, thank you, because I want to respect your time. That's
I'm good.
Okay, cool. So I've asked all of my guests this, what has changed since you started in ministry? What don't you see anymore? What's something that you're like, dag, they don't do this anymore?
Paper Bibles. No, I'm just kidding.
No fact.
Um, honestly, I talked to my parents about this a little bit today, and we all kind of had different answers. But mine is I feel that I don't really see faith formation in families anymore. Um, when I was growing up, we were taught the importance of devotion, prayer, talking together as a family. And now I think that's just rare. When you hear of family faith, it's just, wow, you're an anomaly. It's not the standard anymore. Um, Also, I think that there used to be a time where people were excited to come to church. They were excited to learn about the things of God. And now you have people coming to church, study, or whatever, just to check it off the list. Like, oh, I did that for the week. We have so much emphasis now on marketing. Like, I have to have a graphic that's so appealing to try to convince you as to why you need the word of God, right? And so for me, faith formation seems like more of a luxury instead of a necessity. And to me, that's pretty heartbreaking.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as a young pastor, what does your work-life balance look like? What does that look like for you?
Yeah, my mom taught me something that I like. She said it's not as much about balance as it is harmony. And I like that word. Are you familiar with music, instruments like piano and stuff like that? Um,
Absolutely.
so so for me, when I think harmony, I think, how do I make these things work together to the point that each one has a note to play, and when they play together, it's beautiful. And so I think some notes get more play than others. For instance, for me, that would be family and a spirit of authenticity. And we can talk about authenticity later. My
I'm
husband
looking
and I joke.
forward to that. Uh-huh.
Okay. My husband and I joke with one another and say, man, when we got married, like, we lost a lot of our outside engagements. When I was single, I was so much more itinerant and he was doing things. I was like, when we got married, it just dried up. But the reason that our engagements got cut off too is because we felt that it was so important that once we got married, we took a full year off of ministry engagements other than our home church, and we would just focus on our marriage. And it has proven to be a great investment, because we are the best of friends. It's very hard to have husband and wife work together. I sold my car. Like, we have one car. We work together all of the time. We had a chance to agree on how we would parent our children. When we experienced a miscarriage together in 2017, it drove us closer together. Whereas I've seen some relationships, it's really just kind of severed it, and the couple couldn't reconcile. And so, even in the midst of that, we dedicate as much time to our son as he needs. He's a genius and he's well loved. But we didn't want the testimony that mommy and daddy cared more about the congregation than they did their children, right? And so, even in the same manner, we expose our family to work too. So as we're passing like the little overpass, Jackson's like, want to go to the C3? He loves the C3.
Oh
So
my
it's
God.
not foreign to him, right? Like,
Uh-huh.
it's like family and ministry goes hand in hand. We're even a family oriented church as well. So our church understands the importance of family, and we make sure to stress that although family is not perfect, it must be prioritized. And even in addition to being involved in ministry, I also think that it's important that you have a hobby. So I'm an avid bowler. I'm learning to golf again.
Mhm.
So my work-life balance is very harmonious. At any point, you'll hear a chord that's either comprised of family, ministry, or an outlet, and you'll find that God is the composer, and I just play the notes.
So, okay, so you have to teach me how to bowl. First of all, I know
I'm not the best, but I do it. Let me tell you why it's an outlet, because and I'm not talking about my congregation. I love my congregation, but in life, there are people who will get on your nerves. And so I picked bowling since I can't take my frustration out on people. I named the pins according to who frustrated me. And that has helped me to become a better bowler, because when I'm mad, I try to knock out a specific pin.
that is genius. Yeah, I'm sitting here like, wow, I didn't think of that. That's like the perfect thing. You can just like vision their faces, like,
Yep.
you're gone. Like,
Like, you got on my nerves today. I can't do nothing but pray for you, but I can knock this pin down.
no, I love that. And so it goes into this last question. Then I'm gonna I know I'm being selfish. I understand. I know y'all have your questions in the comments. I get it, but I'm trying to like take this in. Like, okay. No, but you and I talked and you hit on it in your answer previously. when we were talking, this was our first time speaking over the phone, and you just begin to flow into talking about authenticity and, you know, how that's major to you. And I'm the same way. And so many people, like, you know, they see me out there preaching, or they kind of have this preconceived notion that I'm this kind of way, but I'm super laid back and I'm drawn to authentic people. And so can you speak about how authenticity can help you in ministry or life? And because honestly, if we're honest, the ministry world has a way of causing one to feel like they must fit into a certain mode. We've all been there, especially being young. You know, you feel like you got to be more mature. You got to dress this way. You got to do this. And we feel like we must fit into a certain persona. So why is it important that one remains authentic?
When I think about authenticity, I think about cars or warranties or products. And you think about it like the warranty only covers what the manufacturer put on it, right? So anytime you start doing things that it wasn't, your car, whatever, wasn't designed for you to do, it voids the warranty. So the warranty represents coverage, and God will always honor the warranty. But when you go putting in parts and things and places and people that don't belong, it could very well void the warranty.
Wow.
Right. And so even in thinking about that, when it comes to authenticity too, for me, I like to talk about the difference between transparency and authenticity. So for me, transparency is how much you care to share, while authenticity is like the weight behind your words, or should I say the truth behind your intent. So for me, it's not enough to be transparent anymore. You have to stay authentic. And personally, I feel like transparency is the what or the how much, but authenticity is the why. So in the spirit of transparency, it might look like this: no new friends. I can't stand females, and I don't want nobody else in my circle, and that's on God, right? But if I'm honest, authenticity may look like this. Okay, I know I said no new friends, but the reason I say that is because I tried having multiple friendships and they didn't end well. Right. Or I don't want to add anyone else in my circle because I'm scared that they might become friends with my best friend and someone might take my place. You know, so a lot of times we're transparent and we're saying stuff, but we're not really communicating the truth behind why we say those things. So you can comment if you want to, but if not, I'll keep going.
Yeah, you. This is okay. I'm like, please.
But even like in a lighter respect, transparency for me talking to you, this was an earlier example, might be, well, I don't hoop and holler when I preach. Authenticity says, I love it, I celebrate it, I wish I could do it, but it's not my style and it doesn't feel organic to me, right? Why? One time when I was preaching, you know, I was talking, it got good to me, I got excited. This organ crept up on me. It scared me. I mean, I was young. I was preaching. I said, whoa, whoa. I mean, in the middle of my prayer, I said, what is that? Like, it threw me off, right? And so I remember the point of me preaching, my circle was full of hoopers and I loved it. But I used to feel so ashamed because of my little country twang preaching voice. And I hated that I couldn't pull it like my friends or modulate high enough or say, put me in A flat, E flat, F sharp, whatever. I'd be mad at that, you know? And I never really got the whole, Doc, you churched us on today. And I always got now wasn't that a strong word? Didn't you just teach us on tonight? And so I used to feel some type of way about that until I discovered that when people invited me, like, they want Lesley.
Yeah.
They want what you have to offer. They want the grace that you're bringing to the pulpit. And so honestly, what I learned through that is once you live into your authentic self long enough, people start to treat you the way that you treat you.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh.
Right? So there came a point in my ministry where I would go to churches where the main expression of preaching is like the charismatic celebration. And they'd be like, hey, Doc, don't play behind her. Like, she's not an organ preacher. She's going to teach us. And, you know, at first I was like, what? Like, maybe I can try it. But then I was like, no, like, oh, snap. They respect my voice.
Yeah.
They know she's going to teach a strong word. You know, she might not celebrate in this manner, but we're going to get a word and our lives are going to be changed because of it. So to me, authenticity is being true to who you are. Authenticity helps me to preach relational evangelism. I might not get an opportunity where I get to speak to somebody from a pulpit, but because you see I'm the same way on the stage that I am at Walmart, you're going to be like, oh snap, she's the same way. And so if I let God transform me and use me the way that I'm wired, I'll reach way more people than trying to be somebody that I'm not, right? And people can smell authenticity from a mile away. Like for
Absolutely.
me, I'm quirky. I like audiobooks, bowling, and Hulu. Like that's me. Yet if you were to see me acting all mean, cussing folks out, and posting inappropriate things on Instagram, you'd be like, "Yo, that's not Lesley. Like, what are you doing? You're not living into your authentic self." Even a perfect example: someone made a fake Instagram account of me, and I was getting inboxes and texts and, "Hey, is this you? What's going on?" And the person was saying stuff like in the inbox, "Blessings to you."
Yeah, they
And
know.
then I was like,
Not
first of
me.
all, and the people who know me were like, "Nah, this is not Lesley," because Lesley would have been like, "Hey, what's up?" Or she would have texted me, or she wouldn't put something in the DMs that she can't post on her personal page. So authenticity is being true to who it is that you are. It's not keeping it real for the sake of saying, "Man, I'm gonna lay you out," or blah blah blah. No, that's not real. I'm gonna fight you, but I'm gonna be who it is that I'm called to be.
Absolutely. I don't think you understand how much I'm so appreciative of these answers, even the authenticity that you displayed today through your answers, and even you talking about your style of preaching and how it's relational. Like that is so, I know everyone who's watching can like flood the comments and you can feel it. Like when you speak, like when I speak to you, I want to say when you speak to you, that's totally incorrect. My Princeton degree now. No,
I
but
love it.
I can feel that. And so I can only imagine what people feel when they're listening to you preach. On top of the strong word, we know that's like a non-negotiable for you, but it's we feel it even now. And so I just again, thank you for your yes. But we have some questions from the audience, virtual audience, if you will.
Okay.
And so one person said, and this is actually the head of our ministerial alliance at my church. And so y'all have
Hello.
C3, we have hashtag we are SSBC, see how we did that?
That's great. I love
So
it.
yeah, you can answer in your own way.
hmm Um, for me, I had wonderful examples as pastors. My parents kind of modeled authenticity. We had that faith formation growing up where we sat around the dinner table. We've always been open, even in the spirit of authenticity and transparency. Like I learned about all the hard stuff when I was young. Like I was learning about sex at 5. My parents are very open with
Mhm.
me about different things because their whole take was, I don't want you to learn something from the world that I can't teach you here at home.
Right.
And so even being around the dinner table, you know, ministries have a bad reputation of they talk about the people that they pastor. I didn't get that from my parents. Like they didn't bring home mess, or if they counseled somebody saying, "Oh, you got to see what sister or bro so and so got into." And so that has really influenced the way that I pastor, is to just have a strong level of integrity and character, and being the same person off the platform as you are on the platform. Also genuinely liking people. You'd be amazed at how many people are pastoring that actually don't like people.
Yeah,
um,
truly.
and so being a PK has influenced me in the best of ways, but I've also been friends with people who are PKs whom have had negative experiences. So it's also shown me what not to do. And so for me, it's not win or lose, it's win or learn. And when I see something that's not the best, I say, how can I make a lesson out of this and then be better the next time?
Absolutely. You know what's so funny? When the question came up, normally and you said everyone doesn't have the same testimony that you have, with having such strong leaders who are themselves all the time. Normally when questions like this come up, people kind of tense up, or they're like, da, da, da. And you just answered it with so much grace. So that speaks to the leaders that your parents were. And so the next person asks, how do you properly seek out a mentor?
hmm that can be tough, but I think one of the ways I would advise is look for someone who has something that you desire and then reach out to them. And I think one of the things that hurt me early on was reaching out to mentors and people telling me no, or I don't know you like that. And I think as a young leader, you have to learn the art of resilience. And one of the things that I've learned too is that no does not mean never, it just means not yet. So
Mhm.
even if you find a mentor and they might say no in one season, they might be ready in another season too. Because there have been times where people reached out to me and said, "Hey, will you mentor me?" And I was just like, "I'm not in a space to mentor anybody. Like, I don't know nothing." And, that was one season. And now it's like, well, I still don't know, but so much, but I might be able to know something that this person doesn't know and be able to pour back into somebody else. So I would say, look for the characters and qualities that you would want, that you're looking to develop in yourself, and reach out to people, email them, because you never know unless you try. So don't just keep wondering and guessing and saying, oh, I wish and I hope and I pray that I get one. I think about the story of Elijah and Elisha.
Mhm.
God was like, all right, Elijah, I want you to go mentor Elisha. He's the next person, whatever. Elijah was like, okay. He put the cloak out there, laid his hands on him, went about his business. But it was Elisha's job to follow Elijah. Hey, I'm not leaving. Like, I'm staying with you. Where you go, I go. And so a lot of people feel like it's the mentor's job to reach out, when really it's the mentee's job to keep pursuing and say, hey, I ain't gonna let you go. I'm not ready to let up yet, or be willing to try more than one person. So don't give up if your first chosen mentor doesn't say yes. There's somebody out there for you.
Absolutely. I just got a text that literally says all of the ministry discussions have been good, but this has been the best one. And I'm sitting here
Wow,
like, wow.
that's major.
They've all been good. I don't know, like this one, I don't know. There's like this authentic like spirit that I feel like it's been great, and I just thank you for being here. One thing you said, and then I'm going to let you go because you have overextended yourself. Your answers were well thought out, and you
I hope I didn't put you to shame.
Oh, you did. You exceeded. I mean, I didn't have an
Good.
expectation, but this has just been so rich. Like, I know people say that in church, but it really has been. And you blessed me as much as you have blessed those who are watching. But you said something so powerful about the story of Elisha and Elijah. I know we don't always like look at the part where, Elisha was saying, I want to actually go back to my parents and tell them, that this is what I want to do. Like we never look at that part, and you hit on that.
Yeah.
Like it's the job to make the decision that I want this. And so, someone said, thank you for your authenticity. Yes. Thank you so much.
I have to add on what my mom said too. And so this is why you always have to have people in your circle too, to hit some of your blind spots. She said something good about mentorship, is if you don't get it immediately in a person, you can also be mentored from afar by listening to teachings, reading books, etc. There are some mentors that I have that they don't know I'm their mentee.
Absolutely. Right. We downplay the power of reading. We
Please read.
downplay the oh man, that's a whole different like that's oh gosh. Please read. Right. I'll just leave that at that. But absolutely. And so thank you so much for being on here. And again, everyone, you can connect. Like, don't let this be your last time of listening to this powerful voice. You can definitely follow her. You see, it's right there at the end of her box there, Lesley F. McClendon. And thank you, Dr. McClendon, so much. As
Absolutely.
stated, you talked about how you've been in a transition and you are a pastor. You don't have a lot of idle time just waiting for people to call you. And so for you to literally take the time to do this, I am so appreciative. And thank you for everyone who is watching. And we're going to end on this. Pastor McClendon or Dr. McClendon, if you don't have anything else to say, we're going to be out of here and go get us some type of snack or something.
That sounds great. That sounds good to me. Thank you everybody for watching and just for listening. And I'm definitely grateful that y'all hung around to hear this discussion and what we had to say. So I just three things that I would leave you with, especially to the up and coming generation, is be rooted, be relevant, and stay renewing your mind. If you can do those three things, you're unstoppable. Don't forget where you came from. Be like the sons of Issachar, discerning the times. Be transformed by the renewing of your mind. So that's my three takeaways.
There you go. There you have it. See, she left us with even more than we ever asked. And so, thank you so much, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your night. Thank you for tuning in, and stay tuned. Ministry Discussions Part 6 is coming up. It may come up, or we may just end on this high note. I don't know. This is just amazing. So enjoy the rest of your night. Thank you guys for tuning in.
Thank y'all.